My gay best friend refuses to accept I'm bisexual because he hates women. He stopped talking to me when I got a girlfriend. Steve and I have been friends for over 10 years and we've been inseparable since we were kids. I loved him like a brother and he was a good pillar of support when we went to college. This exposed us to a completely different world where we were able to learn things our conservative families didn't teach us, like the concept of queerness. Quickly into college, Steve realized that he was gay. It didn't take long for me to come to the same conclusion. Since I was attracted to men and didn't know anything about being queer, I thought I was gay too. Steve and I found other queer people and our new friend circle was made of gay people. We couldn't tell our families that we were queer, so Steve and I could only depend on each other. We even started dating men, but our initial relationships weren't very serious. After my first gay relationship ended, I realized that I was attracted to both men and women. I was bisexual. I told this to my group of queer friends, who said that I was going through a phase, that years of brainwashing was the reason I was attracted to women, that I would get over it, and they told me that I was gay. Steve refused to accept that I was bisexual and told me that bisexuality wasn't real. He said I either liked one or the other, I couldn't like both. I tried to convince him, but he refused to accept that I wasn't gay. We were roommates and this started causing a lot of tension between us. We would constantly fight over this because Steve would ask me every day if my phase was over. He even had me take an "Am I gay?" quiz, which just doesn't work. I told him to let it go because I was done trying to convince him I was bisexual. Somehow, he took this as a sign that I had come to terms with me being gay. So, things went back to normal between us and I had 2 more gay relationships. Steve would use this as ammo to say that I never liked girls and was just brainwashed with my parents' ideals. This actually made me really uncomfortable and it was a big reason why I ended those relationships. To cheer me up over my breakups, Steve and our friends took me to a bar. That's where I met my current girlfriend Mary. Her and I hit it off immediately and my feelings for her felt natural. We exchanged numbers and kept talking for a week before I invited her to my apartment. She was so amazing and I wanted to show her off to all my friends. I introduced her to Steve but his vibe was really off. I didn't think much of it at the time, but when Mary was leaving, Steve glared at her. I asked him what that was about and he rolled his eyes then went to his room. If he didn't want to talk about it, then I wasn't going to push it. I invited Mary over a lot and every time Steve refused to talk to her. Whenever I mentioned she was coming over, he would just hide in his room until she left. I thought it was very weird and Mary even questioned me on it. I told her I had no idea why he was acting like this, but I was going to ask because I was curious myself. When Steve and I had our talk, he told me that Mary was not good for me and asked me why I was being so close to a woman. I said it was because I really liked her and I was planning on asking her out properly very soon. He got really mad and stormed off. From then on, Steve started picking fights with me about the most trivial things that didn't matter before. Just me looking at a girl would set him off. I distanced myself from Steve for a while because I thought that's what we really needed. I spent most of my time with Mary and I did make our relationship official. I posted about it everywhere on social media because I was so happy. Well, when I got back to my apartment, I saw Steve and a few of our friends waiting for me. They were having an intervention because I love women. Steve immediately started shouting at me, asking why I would betray him. He told me that I turned my back on him and called Mary a beach. I told him he couldn't call her that and he had no right speaking about her. I also said that I am bisexual but that doesn't mean I was leaving him. Our friends took Steve's side and asked me why I started dating a woman. They all said that Mary bewitched me. I couldn't take it anymore and just left. When I came back later, Steve refused to talk to me and told me that he wouldn't talk to me as long as I was in a relationship with Mary. I hoped that this would blow over quickly, but Steve refused to talk to me for a whole month. Steve is being really unfair and I don't want to end my relationship with Mary. Still, Steve needs my support and nobody back home knows anything about us being queer. We would most probably be disowned if they found out. Mary eventually found out something was wrong so I decided to tell her about Steve not talking to me. She said she would support anything I decided to do but also let me know that she thinks Steve is really codependent on me. I started to really think about it and she was right. We were the only connection to home left for each other and that made us way too dependent on each other. I felt like we needed space from each other. She also said he was being really biphobic which wasn't a healthy friendship for me to stay in. I did not know biphobia was a thing because I assumed that everyone in the LGBT community supported each other, and I thought I was doing something wrong. I went ahead and cut off my toxic friend group and I won't be talking to them in the future. As for Steve, I decided to move out and when I told him about this, he started crying and begged me not to leave. He said he would talk to me and that he would tolerate Mary. I told him that we were being codependent and he wouldn't need to tolerate me if he didn't like my choices. I told him that I would be there for him when he decides to come out and that he could always count on my support. Steve kept crying but I told him my decision was final. He wasn't being a good friend and I didn't like the way he spoke about Mary. His intervention was a step too far and I really needed to rethink my friendship with him. I called Mary after my talk with Steve and basically cried on the phone for hours. Steve was my best friend and I was sad our friendship took this turn for the worst. She listened to everything I had to say and reassured me everything was going to be fine. When I stopped crying, I told her I had to look for a new place to live so I hung up. A few hours later, Mary called me to tell me that one of her friends has a room and that I could move in with him. She was truly a goddess. The next day, Steve's friends started calling and yelling at me for abandoning them for a girl. They accused me of being a bad friend and accused Mary of breaking up our friendship. Mary called me and told me that my friends were calling her and shouting at her for breaking up my friendships. I apologized but she was very understanding and told me that she would be there for me if I needed her. Hearing her say that made me feel better. This ordeal has made me understand that I made the right decision by sticking with Mary. I think I'm in love with her.